Hi everyone and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today we're going to be doing some lace cut pages in the 6x6" Dina Wakley journal. Now I love doing lace cut pages or cutting pages and making windows in my art journals. It's something I really enjoy doing, and I like using a craft knife to do that, a surgical knife to do that. I've always cut with one and I just find it really comfortable to cut with it and be really organic with it. Just make sure you've got a really sharp blade. The green piece that you can see in there is a chopping board I got from IKEA. It's a really thin plastic chopping board that I just chopped in half, which fits into my journals perfectly. It is important to try and keep it as thin as possible, just so you can get it as close to the edge as possible. That just means you can cut up as close to the gutter in your journal as possible. Now, part of the reason I wanted to do this, particularly in this journal, is because when I've done lace cut pages before, I've always used my Dilutions journal with the mixed media paper in it, and that's worked really well. In the other Dina Wakley mixed media journals, which I love the size of it, none of the papers in there are really robust enough to do a lace cut page. They would be very fine and delicate, particularly for getting pieces as fine as I am on this one. But this paper is a lot thicker. It's 120 gram paper, I think. It's like a thick cardboard. It doesn't bleed through and it cuts through beautifully. Now the off-cut pieces that I've got are really actually quite thick, and they're actually moldable, so you could make a really cool 3D flower effect by just bending them gently and gluing them down in that way. So I've kept all those pieces I've cut out to do something with in the future. So you can see how easy it is sort of to cut up as close to possible, close as I could to the edge, just by using that thin cutting board. And by having a really sharp knife, it means you can sort of just move it really carefully as you go across. Again, don't do as I do as I say, but cut away from yourself. I tend to cut towards myself, which is okay, but until you actually slice through your finger. So cut away from yourself. But the good thing about using a knife, particularly when you're doing those curved edges, if you lift the knife off as you do it, it's quite organic and it will slice through the page really easily. So once I've done this, I am going to paint my lacework black. I tend to do this a lot because it just works as a really good frame, and I'm just using the Dina Wakley Black Gesso, which is a lovely matte black and dries really quickly. And you can see there I've got a piece of paper that I use for any spills and bits and pieces in the background there. Gives you a lovely stenciled image that you could cut out and use on another page at some stage in the future. So once I've painted one side, I'm going to flip it over and paint the other side, because both sides are going to be visible. In this piece I wanted to be able to flip it so I can see both pages that I'm going to do on the other side. Sometimes I choose to glue that page down onto another page, so you just get the framework and it's a bit like a stained glass window. But I like the fact that you can sort of flip it and get two different effects using the one page as a frame. So as I was going along, I was kind of thinking, what do I want to do in the background pages? And I had an idea that I might put some quotes in between the flowers, so the petals of the flowers, and have a quote in there. And I played around with that, and the great thing about having that piece of paper in between is you've kind of got the stencil image of what you can work with on the page that you're going to be working on. So you can kind of have a practice go before you actually have a go on your real page. So you can see here how it looks when it's all cut out and painted. And this is me starting on the next page. So I'm just going in. I was really sort of blocked with what I wanted to do, so I did what I usually do when I'm a little bit stuck, and that was go into my collage paper pile and start gluing some down. So and you'll recognise some of these papers from previous videos that I've done on this channel. These are all sort of gel print papers that I've got in my stash. The red stencil paper was the one I used for the Jane Davenport face that I did a few weeks ago, or the week before this is uploaded, I think. Some of the Tim Holtz collage papers, just anything I had floating around in my journal, and I'm just using some gel medium to glue it down. Also, while the gel medium's still tacky, I'm just putting in some gold foil over the top just to give a little bit of bling to the page. On the other side, I'm doing exactly the same with the same sort of range of papers, obviously looking a little bit different, and trying to make it kind of cohesive in the fact that while it's going to be different, you're using the same sorts of papers on the page. The other thing I really make sure that I do when I'm doing something like this is have stuff overlapping so it looks like it's put there deliberately. If you stick stuff down and just have them butting up next to each other, it kind of looks like it's very rigid. If you have bits like that piece going over the top of a few pieces, it sort of gives a little bit more flow to the page. But it's highly personal, and what you like goes. So just play around with it. If you don't particularly like what you've done, you can always just think about this as texture in the background and then paint over the top. You can go back like I did to the other page and think, oh, okay, I need to add something else in there. You can also see that I'm being quite generous with the matte medium as I'm gluing it down and making sure I'm going over all the edges, and that just makes sure that everything's nice and flat and stays where it's supposed to be. So once I've made the gel medium a little bit tacky with the heat gun, I'm just going in and pressing off some of the foil onto my page. These are just offcuts from my ink machine. I keep any offcuts just so I can add random little bits like this onto my collage pages or onto my alcohol ink pages, so don't waste anything. It can always be used for something. So now I'm just going in with some watercolors over the top just to add a bit of color back in and a little bit of unity and brightness into my page. So I'm just using the Jane Davenport's Brights palette, but any watercolor medium, whether it be scribble sticks or watercolor pencils, inks, will work the same. Just be aware, if you are putting something that's watercolor over the top though, that you're not going to be able to, anything you add on now either needs to be permanent on top or make sure it's not going to react with the water again, because anything I put water based on this is going to mix with the watercolor. So this is very much like some of the other collage pieces I've done in this journal. I had a piece up called Creativity Takes Courage, I think, and doing mic making, and it's the same sort of thing, just adding colour until you're happy. I could have quite easily left it the way it was. I really like having these sorts of bright colours popping through my pages. If you didn't have watercolours, you could certainly use watered down acrylics. That would work in the same way. Just make sure they're really watered down so you get that translucency to them, so you can actually see the collage that you've bothered to put down in the background. So now I'm just going in with my Posca paint pens just to add some marks in the background and just to play around with it a little bit. When I'm doing the mark making in the background, I tend to add them in 3 places around my page just to sort of, again, give that unity, and just those odd numbers make it look like it's supposed to be there. I also tend to work a little bit in triangles, so you've got these triangles happening across the page, because our eyes like to travel across the page of our artwork and try and find the patterns. So if it's something really random and busy like this, our eyes kind of like to find somewhere to rest. So on this page, for example, that turquoise really stands out, and it's very obvious that those are the bits my eyes go to first of all. So you could quite easily use that frame to do something. You could draw around it so you've got something a little bit more obvious. As I said before, I was thinking about writing a quote within the frame, the petals of the frame, so that when you flipped it over, it would be highlighted that there's a quote there. There's all sorts of clever things that you can do with windows, and I'm sure if you look on YouTube, on lots of different channels, you would be able to find some ideas for some lace cuts and how other people use them. Even just cutting a window into your page so you can peek through to what's coming next is a really, really cool technique to do in your art journals. So there's lots of things that you can do with them. As I said before, if I wanted to, I could certainly just add some glue onto the back of that and glue it down onto one page, and I could put maybe a quote on the other page just to make it look a little bit more finished. But I really like that flipping between the two. And you can see me as I'm working, I'm kind of flipping the frame over to see what it looks like as I work. And I like doing that just so I've got a bit of an idea how the finished piece is going to work. You may find the papers I've got in the background really distracting as well. I use those all the time, and I take them out when they've got lots of stuff on them and scan them into my computer and print them out, so I've got random paper that I can use in my collages. So I find it really, really handy. But when you're working on a page, particularly like this, that kind of looks like an extension of it, so it can be a little bit busy to the eye. I just forgot to take them out as I was working, so yeah, you'll see the finished page without them in the end. This is the Jane Davenport License to Quill pen. It's a flexible nib and it's a permanent ink. I find it really, really cool to make those little raindrop shapes. You just tap it across the page and you get these really cool raindrop shapes. I also really like the scalloped edge that you can do with it, just really loosely. And I found when I'm doing things like this, if you do 2 or 3 lines, it kind of makes it look more deliberate. If you just do 1 line and it's a little bit wonky, it can make it look like you've made a mistake. If you do 2 or 3, it makes it look like it's supposed to be there. The final thing I'm doing is just using that pen again to go around the cut edges just to make sure they're all black. That's just a personal choice to me, but I didn't like the white sort of seeping through. I liked it being really black so you could see what was happening. So this is a close-up of the final lace cut pages. I was really happy with how they all came out in the end and how the whole piece came up. And certainly when I get my next journal, because I've got one on order, this is something I'm going to be doing it in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye for now.